Welcome to episode 41 of Memorial Youth Podcast. This is your host, Landon Harting, and my co-host, Christina.
Hey.
Just a reminder that the purpose of this podcast is to grow alongside you each week as we look into Scripture and to have a little fun while we're at it. Our first segment is our fun one. What do you have for us this week, Christina?
All right, this week we're playing You Can Only Bring One. Okay, so you can only bring one thing in these scenarios that I give you, okay?
Okay.
So you have one item.
One item.
To each of these scenarios.
Okay.
The first one, if you only could bring one thing to class, what would you bring? And you guys be thinking too.
I would choose one thing, my phone.
All right, my phone. Okay.
Actually, can I change mine?
Sure.
Is it too late? Laptop.
Laptop.
I
think I would bring my laptop too. You can type notes if you want.
You can play games if you want.
Probably shouldn't do that in class though. But that's a good one. So, next. If you were going on a spaceship to the moon, what's the one thing you'd want to bring?
Wow.
You have like a spacesuit and stuff. That's like just part of the spaceship.
Okay. Good book.
A good book. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I would bring a flag that is a Christina Harting flag that I designed. And I'm going to put it on the moon.
Wow.
To show Christina Harting was here. Maybe that's what it'll say. Christina was here.
Wow, okay.
But the was has a Z on it. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Oh, wow. That's going to be interesting that you chose to spell it that way. But go ahead. What's our next one?
The next one is, if you're going on a walk, what's the one thing you want to bring?
My dog.
Oh, I was going to say that. Sushi. I'd bring sushi. What is the one thing you'd bring on vacation?
Swim trunks.
Swim trunks. Okay. I think I would bring sunscreen. That's important. What's one thing you would bring on a field trip? If you're at school, going on a field trip, might get bored, who knows? What would you bring?
A friend.
I think I would bring like a sketch pad. Something to
okay.
just draw and doodle. And then what's the one thing you would bring at a zombie apocalypse?
Hatchet.
I think I would bring a katana.
Wow.
It's like one of those really nice swords. Sharp swords. So let us know. What did you guys say was the one things that you would bring to those scenarios?
What you bringing?
Let us know. And now we're going to get into Scripture.
Cool. This week we continue our series, A Walk Through the Bible. The Bible's made up of 66 different books, and yet all of those books collectively tell one story about God's love and redemption of humanity through Jesus Christ. We're exploring that story. God created the world perfect. Sin entered our lives, and it broke the world, and it broke us. God has a plan to bring redemption for all humanity, and He operates that plan through His people. He chose His people through Abraham. His people were then enslaved in Egypt. Moses led them out. Joshua led them to the promised land. Then different judges or chiefs led them. And it was really messy, and God's people continually failed Him and turned away. They needed a king to redeem them. That's where the book of Ruth picks up. Sort of. You won't see that until the end, but I promise it's there. And the book of Ruth is less about God doing very specific things and more about how God's people are called to live every single day. We're examining the lives of 3 followers of God in the story: Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz. Last week we saw the kindness and loyalty and boldness of Ruth and Naomi. This week they officially arrive and settle in Israel because they left the home country of Ruth, Moab. And now that they're settled, we're going to see Boaz's generosity happen. And before we jump into the story, I want to give one definition. And that's what's going to be happening in the story. It's called gleaning. Gleaning is what would happen for foreigners and widows. They would come behind people who were farming, and they would be farming wheat. And if you were pulling off the wheat and stuff like that, and it fell to the ground, you wouldn't pick it up. You would leave it for the people who would follow you and who would collect it. And so this was a law of the land and something that God commanded His people to do so that everybody, no matter how poor or whatever they didn't have, could get food to eat.
And that stuff wouldn't go to waste, too.
Yeah. And so here we are at Ruth chapter 2, verses 2 through 11.
One day Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go out into the harvest fields to pick up the stalks of grain left behind by anyone who is kind enough to let me do it." Naomi replied, "All right, my daughter, go ahead." So Ruth went out to gather the grain behind the harvesters, and as it happened, she found herself working in a field that belonged to Boaz, the relative of her father-in-law, Elimelech. When she was there, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you," he said. "The Lord bless you," the harvesters replied. Then Boaz asked his foreman, "Who is that young woman over there? Who does she belong to?" And the foreman replied, "She is the young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvesters. She's been hard at work ever since, except for a few minutes' rest in the shelter." Boaz went over and said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, stay right here with us while you gather grain. Don't go to any other fields. Stay right behind the young women working in my field. See which part of the field they are harvesting, and then follow them. I have warned the young men not to treat you roughly, and when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water they have drawn from the well." Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. "What have I done to deserve such kindness?" she asked. "I am only a foreigner." "Yes, I know," Boaz replied, "but I also know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I have heard how you left your father and mother in your own land to live here among complete strangers. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done."
So we see several things here about what it means to follow God. And we're going to talk about those things. The first thing is this, is when we follow God, we are called to work hard. God calls us to work hard at whatever we do.
So yeah, that doesn't mean that like life is all about work, just doing work every day, all day, but it means that we have the opportunity to give God glory in any work that we do. Our like schoolwork, our work around the house, like helping our parents, whatever we do, our sports, our hobbies, all the things we do, we have this opportunity to like give it to God. And I think in this story, Boaz is doing that. Like this field that he has, he's like wanting to give that to God and say, "Hey, I want to help this woman, these women, Ruth and Naomi, because you know they're good people. I want to bless them."
And I think Ruth is also working very hard. She's going to the field, and her hard work is noticed by other people, and she gets respect from Boaz and from his workers because she's working hard, and that's something God has called us to, and that is difficult to do, but it's something a part of what God calls us to. Something else we see in the story about what it means to follow God is that we're called to be generous. Boaz gives more than is required by the law. Boaz cares for the people who don't have very much. He lets people glean in his land. And God cares for the people who are struggling as well. That's why he made the law. That's why there's a rule about gleaning, that farmers had to leave it for people to come who needed help. But he goes a step further and he says, look, instead of going further behind, he's basically telling her, stand right by the people who are picking the things,
so basically
and just get
extras,
that. Yes,
right?
Get extra. Yeah. Have more. And if you need water, go get that. Take care of yourself. And he is just showing his heart of generosity, and we're called to do the same, is to share what we can with people around us.
Yeah, and also we're called to not judge people by like their situations or their appearance or whatever, but judging people by like looking at their heart and knowing who they are. And Ruth is a Moabite, which is actually an enemy of Israel, but Boaz still treats her with kindness and love because what does he judge her by? Like her heart and like what her situation and how she's like, you know, responded to her situation.
And I think it's important. He doesn't let the fact that she's different, Moabite, which was an enemy of Israel.
Right.
She's an outsider. He doesn't let those things stop him from treating her with respect and kindness and compassion.
And he even went farther than that. He like blessed her with this like opportunity.
Absolutely. And
right.
And we're called to do the exact same. We don't let differences, whether they're race, gender, sexual orientation, or belief, or a different religion, or whatever it is, we don't let those things stop us from treating people with respect, love, kindness, and compassion.
And when we do those things, when we do what's right, when we do what's loving, sometimes people will notice that in us and like be drawn to us because of it. And I think Boaz is especially kind to Ruth and Naomi because Ruth has been doing what is good. So Boaz is drawn to Ruth because there's like goodness seeping out of her. So that's what we want for our lives. Like we want to love people with that love so that people like say, hey, I want to be loved like that, or I want to love like they do. So that's like a good challenge for us as like Christ followers.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know it doesn't always happen. It's not that every time we do something right, people notice and they're going to recognize that and want to be near us. But when people and when you will continually do the right thing, people will see that, experience that, and be drawn to it. And you'll draw people who want to also do the right thing, who want to build up other people, who want to lift up other people, who want to support other people. And when that happens, it's something awesome. And what we're going to see is not only is Boaz drawn to Ruth because Ruth is doing the right thing, we're going to see that Ruth is also drawn to Boaz because Boaz is doing the right thing.
That's cute.
But we're going to get into that next week. So thank you for joining us this week on Memorial Youth Podcast. Tune in next Sunday for episode 42 as we continue our series of Walk Through the Bible and we close up the book of Ruth. Remember, you are loved by God and you're loved by us.
See ya.